Tonight, the summer surge.
And this is a pandemic that is flaring up all over the place.
Coronavirus cases breaking new records in hotspots across the country.
Please, I'm begging you, wear a face cover.
This as major retailers implement their own mask-wearing mandates.
Let us not forget that we are involved in a serious social revolution.
The life and legacy of the conscience of Congress, civil rights icon John Lewis.
Push and pull until we redeem the soul of America.
Plus, a global study looks at the influence of God, religion, and prayer around the world. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation. Good evening. The continued spike in coronavirus cases fueling concern across the country. Welcome to Faith Nation. I'm John Jessup. Jenna Browder is out this evening. We begin with a potential for a new round of financial help for American businesses coming just as many contemplate whether the pandemic will force them to close for good. President Trump today meeting with Republican lawmakers to discuss the next form of relief. CBN White House correspondent Ben Kennedy has our top story tonight. Ben, can you give us an idea of what's expected in this next bill?
Well, yeah, John, President Trump says he wants the payroll tax cut while the GOP is pushing for liability protection, jobs, and even health care.
This is a pandemic that is flaring up all over the place.
In response, the White House called House and Senate Republican leaders to the Oval Office to talk about a Phase 4 COVID-19 relief bill.
Kids in school, jobs, and health care would be the theme of the proposal.
For those small businesses, we'll make sure you can stay open.
It's a key priority as debate over more relief legislation coincides with the coronavirus surge across the country. 3.7 million confirmed cases. More than 140,000 Americans have died.
This is a worldwide problem caused by China, but it's a worldwide problem. Countries are going through hell.
In a desperate attempt to slow the spread, Surgeon General Dr. Jerome Adams took to Twitter with a public plea.
Please, I'm begging you, wear a face covering. These small actions will make a big difference.
On the vaccine front, Oxford University released early results saying Phase 1 of the human trials showed a positive immune response. Increased presence of antibodies and T cells that might stop the virus in its tracks.
The truth is that we don't know when we'll have a final result on how well the vaccine works. It's likely to be months rather than weeks. We said before we were aiming for September, October time. I still think that's a realistic aspiration, but we can't be certain.
Now, today, President Trump announced he is bringing back the coronavirus daily task force briefings, which he will lead. He says those will most likely begin tomorrow, that is Tuesday, at 5 p.m. John?
All right, CBN's Ben Kennedy. Thanks, Ben. Well, joining me now is CBN medical reporter Lori Johnson. Lori, thanks for being with us. Why don't we start right where Ben left off with a vaccine? What is the latest that you're hearing on a vaccine? Any news on that front?
Well, John, last week I spoke with the NIH director, Francis Collins, who is on the front lines of the coronavirus pandemic, as you know. And a lot of people aren't aware of the fact that he's a very outspoken Christian, a man of God and a man of science. And he is very excited. He believes that there will be a vaccine by December and that it will be mass produced by that time and available to the people who need it most at the end of the year, beginning of next year. We're talking about people who work in hospitals and nursing homes, people in very highly affected areas, and that by spring, John, everyone in the United States who wants a vaccine will be able to have that vaccine. Of course, we know that recent polls show that 1 in 5 Americans say even when a vaccine is available, they will reject it. Francis Collins said that he understands a lot of people are a little wary because the vaccine has been rushed to market, but that the rushing aspect of it doesn't have anything to do with the fact that it will work and will be safe. It's really more of the manufacturing that's being done right now rather than later.
Dr. Collins trying to give the reassuring word there. Well, plain and simple to the great mask debate, do masks work, and should there be a federal mask mandate with the surge now that we're seeing in several states?
Well, of course, everyone has so many different opinions, but the scientific opinion is yes, masks have been shown to work. But sure, it's, we can understand why people are a little bit hesitant and a little bit confused about the mask issue, because remember, at the very beginning of the pandemic, the Surgeon General, Jerome Adams, who you just saw begging people to wear a mask, he came out and said to the nation, hey, don't worry about it, masks don't work. And then later, Anthony Fauci said, only the people who need to wear masks are those who might think that they are sick. And now, of course, science tells us that masks do work and everyone should wear a mask when they go into public places. So, but as far as like a national mandate, the president is very firm that he doesn't think that that's the right thing to do as far as our own individual freedoms, but that it would be nice if people chose to do that when a mask is required.
Lori, we just have a few seconds left to the other national debate going on right now, whether kids should go back to school or completely virtual this fall. Is it safe for kids to be back in the classroom in person?
Well, again, the science is on the side of kids going back to school. We know that kids don't transmit the virus as readily as we thought originally, and that staying away from school, John, is so bad for children and actually affects younger or lower income people more than the upper income. So that just widens the rich and the poor disparity. This issue is going to be decided on an individual school district basis, depending on what's going on in the individual communities, not something that's going to be judged on a national basis.
All right. CBN medical reporter Lori Johnson. Thanks, Lori.
My pleasure.
Well, this week's session of the United States House started with Republican and Democratic lawmakers joining in a moment of silence for one of their own, Congressman John Lewis.
Rise in a moment of silence in remembrance of the conscience of the Congress, the Honorable John Lewis.
Flags in Washington and many places around the country still at half-mast in honor of Lewis, who died late Friday after battling stage 4 pancreatic cancer. The peaceful warrior, as he was known, was considered a lion of the civil rights movement. His bloody beating by Alabama state troopers in 1965 galvanized opposition to racial segregation. Lewis, a Democrat, was called the conscience of Congress and maintained strong friendships on both sides of the aisle. Statements from President Trump and Vice President Pence were among the many that honored Lewis's life and legacy. Well, here with us now is special guest Alveda King, Director of Civil Rights for the Unborn for Priests for Life. Dr. King, thanks for being with us today.
Thank you for this opportunity. Hello, everyone.
Well, Congressman John Lewis was a friend and ally of your uncle, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. As of last Friday, he was the last living speaker at the March on Washington, dying on the same day as the Reverend C.T. Vivian. How do you remember the life and legacy of John Lewis?
I met John Lewis in the 1960s. I was a youth organizer, and of course, he was already known as the peaceful warrior of the civil rights movement. My father, Reverend Alfred Daniel Williams King, was there on that bridge, on the Edmund Pettus Bridge, when John was beaten, my dad was beaten, Hosea Williams and others. And so I know that he has been very consistent throughout his lifetime until he died with being forgiving, peaceful, and caring about the people. He was a servant leader, and that is the way I remember Congressman John Lewis.
Alveda, the Edmund Pettus Bridge, named after a KKK leader who supported slavery, it's where John Lewis was brutally beaten marching for the right to vote along with your father and others. What do you think of the idea of renaming the bridge in honor of John Lewis, as some are suggesting?
I believe it would be very appropriate if the bridge is renamed, of course, to Freedom Walkway or Freedom Pathway, with very distinguished notation to Congressman Lewis and others. Things happen and occur in groups rather than one leader and one individual being the only one that should be recognized. I know in the Bible pattern, for example, you had Moses and Abraham and et cetera, but in the New Testament, you had Christ and the disciples, the 12, at the Pentecost, the 120. And so I believe it's appropriate, more like the thing President Trump says, a garden, a historical garden with these historical figures there, perhaps even in their natural habitat of serving or building or doing. So if the bridge is renamed, I would love to see it named something that would not only remember Congressman Lewis, and I mean a champion there, but to remember others as well.
You know, more and more Americans now see racism as a major issue that needs to be addressed. The fight for equality and justice predates John Lewis, your father and uncle, and so many others who made peaceful stands. Dr. King, is it possible to overcome the racial wounds without a move by the power of God?
It is very possible once we acknowledge God, and with God, all things are possible. Martin Luther King Jr. said the day should come when we don't have black power or white power, only God power and human power, with the humans subjected to God Almighty. And once we subject ourselves to God, all things are possible. So I do definitely believe it is possible. We have to acknowledge that we are one race, the human race.
Powerful words. You know, I listened this morning on my way into work to a historian talk about John Lewis and how he adopted the theology of redemptive suffering, getting into what he called good trouble by practicing nonviolence. How did John Lewis influence you as a peaceful warrior?
John Lewis was part of a movement. We understood that unearned suffering is redemptive. That's something Martin Luther King Jr. said. However, as Christians, we're following the doctrine and the gospel of Jesus Christ, not a social gospel. And we deal with not even social justice, but the justice and mercy of God, the judgment of God being tempered by mercy, the gospel of Jesus Christ. And so if we follow the example of Christ, that would include the nonviolent principles that John Lewis followed and carried out throughout his lifetime. He and I had different platforms. I, as I say, am more like a Christian evangelist, the gospel of Jesus Christ, and John fighting for social justice and the social gospel kind of thing. However, I admire him as a peaceful warrior. That's the man that I know or knew. Of course, he's gone now. And I deep control of his family as well.
Dr. Alveda King, thanks for making time for us today and sharing your reflections of John Lewis.
Thank you.
Coming up, we dive deeper into today's headlines with CBN News Chief Political Analyst David Brody. You're watching CBN's Faith Nation.
Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep as the world watches from the outside.
It's a big diplomatic tug of war here in the Middle East.
Go inside the story with Jerusalem Dateline.
Israeli archaeologists are talking about a discovery that could change the thinking about the Temple Mount.
Join CBN Jerusalem Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell and get the biblical perspective on the events shaping the world.
What starts in Israel then ends up going to other places.
Watch Jerusalem Dateline Friday night at 9:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
Welcome back. Joining me now to discuss some of the day's top headlines, David Brody, CBN News chief political analyst. David, why don't we begin where Ben Kennedy started, our CBN White House correspondent. We know that there's consensus growing for phase 4 of the coronavirus stimulus, less so when it comes to how much and whether it should include the payroll tax cuts that the president is advocating or funding for the CDC and NIH. Lawmakers are, of course, against a clock. They've got the August recess coming up. Can Washington get it done?
Can Washington get it done? Ha ha, hilarious, rim shot. Look, here's what's going to happen. The payroll tax cut is not going to happen. All right. The president wants this, but no one on Capitol Hill wants it. Even Republicans are saying, I don't know if this is the right move. And here's why, John. The last time I checked, a payroll tax cut helps people that are, wait for it, employed. The problem is that with the Democrats and many Republicans are saying we need to help the unemployed. So what does a payroll tax cut do exactly? Yes, there's an economic argument for it, but we'll save that for another Faith Nation stellar analysis. Okay, I wasn't talking about myself. I was hoping you'd have someone else on. But look, the truth of the matter is that's not going to happen. Now, the CDC funding, the NIH funding, the Trump administration wants to zero that out. That's also not going to happen. I mean, Senate Republicans want to give $10 billion and $15 million respectively to the CDC and the NIH. My guess is you'll see some sort of figure emerge.
Now, David, the president has already threatened to veto if the next bill doesn't include the payroll tax cut. What about that?
Right. Well, there's that for sure. I mean, he says that, but we're going to see what's going to happen regarding that. Look, for Trump, it's always about the art of the deal, right? So he has to put his marker down, and he'll probably say, we'll look at it in phase 5 if there's a phase 5. So it's just not going to happen. Now, there is the issue of unemployment insurance, which will run out at the end of the month for many folks. That's $600 a week. Now, there's no sense that they're going to get anything done by the end of the month, but into August, they will, I'm sure, extend or re-extend those benefits, and then it'll just be retroactive. So people will get their unemployment. I don't think there's any question about that.
David, you were channeling me. You just answered my next question. We'll move on. The White House announced the return of the coronavirus task force briefings. The president will hold the first one tomorrow. Good idea or bad idea?
Well, okay, so here, John, why am I laughing? I'm cracking myself up. Look, good idea in theory, and I'll get to the bad part in a moment. Good idea in theory is that, look, the president can control the narrative. He'll get in front of the cameras. It looks like he's taking charge. He's on top of things. He'll be able to say what he wants to say at the beginning about vaccines and therapeutics and all that. Theory. Here's the potential bad news. Donald Trump isn't all that disciplined, and he could get sidetracked very easily. And if this thing goes sideways like it has before, then watch out, Katie, bar the door. So that's the problem for this president. Look, I've said, well, I really haven't said all along, but I'm about to say it here. The president's Achilles heel all along, a lot of people have lots of Achilles heels for him. The Achilles heel for this president is self-discipline. That's it in a nutshell. This will be key in these briefings.
All right, David, I think we're going to have to leave it there. CBN News chief political analyst David Brody, thanks for the laughter and for your insights.
Oh, anytime. Oh, you mean laughter first, then insights. Gotcha.
Both. We'll take them both.
All right.
Well, coming up, how people across the globe view the importance of religion and prayer. That and more when Faith Nation returns.
On October 1st, 1961, history was made when a tiny station began transmitting the first signals of the Christian Broadcasting Network.
CBN, the Christian Broadcasting Network.
And now, a new era has begun with the all-new CBN News Channel.
Just moments ago, the Iron Dome intercepted an incoming rocket right on the Gaza border.
Administering in this area, spiritual warfare is definitely involved.
A 24/7 news network, bringing you the news you want from a source you can trust.
In Kenya, 40% of the medical services are actually provided by these Christian hospitals.
Let's talk about the economy.
Believers here are joining together to win people to Jesus Christ.
All your favorite shows now in one place. Go to cbnnewschannel.com to find out how to get the CBN News Channel on your TV all day, every day. CBN News. Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
Well, tonight, even though we're living in a more secularized world, many people across the globe say religion is still important and that God plays an important role in their lives. A new worldwide survey, or study rather, from the Pew Research Center surveyed people in 34 countries on their beliefs as well as the importance of God, prayer, and religion in their lives. It found a global divide among nations, though, over how important aspects of faith are and whether belief in God is necessary to lead a moral life. Well, here now for more on that story is Jacob Poster, Associate Director with the Pew Research Center. Jacob, thanks for being with us this evening. Can you tell us a little bit more about the survey? It looked at people across 34 countries. What was the percentage that said religion is important and that God plays an important role in their lives?
Thank you for having me. About 6 in 10 around the world said that religion is important in their lives and that God plays an important role in their lives. But as you said, there's quite a variation across countries for that number. Some countries it's higher than the 60%, some countries it's lower than the 60%, but overall that's what we found from asking our question across 34 countries.
And why don't we just pick it up there? The interesting breakdown is that not everyone thinks that belief in God is necessary to be moral. How does that connection between God and morality vary across different countries and regions?
So when you ask it that way, 45% across the 34 countries say that it's necessary to believe in God in order to be moral. And some countries are above that number. So in Indonesia, Philippines, up to 96% say that it's necessary to believe in God in order to be moral. And then there's a country like Sweden where only 9% say it's necessary to believe in God in order to be moral. And the U.S. is sort of right in the middle. About 44% in the U.S. say it's necessary to believe in God in order to be moral versus 54% who say the opposite in the United States.
Jacob, in most of Western Europe, the share of people who say God is important has decreased over time, saying that God is irrelevant. The opposite, though, is true in Russia and Ukraine. Can you explain why that is and expand on those findings?
So in Russia and Ukraine, we actually have data from 1991, right when the Soviet Union was collapsing. And we know in both those countries, religion has sort of seen a resurgence. So in those countries, you actually saw a rise in those who say that religion is important. But in Western Europe, we've actually seen a decline in religiosity over the last couple decades, where more and more people in Europe are either saying that they're agnostic or they don't believe in anything in particular. So a secularization in Western Europe has happened at the same time that there's been sort of an increase in religiosity in some former Soviet Union countries.
So, Jacob, how does that compare overall? We just kind of focused on Russia and Ukraine, but how does this survey compare to past surveys?
Well, in past surveys, and this one included, we see that there's various factors that go into religiosity. One thing that is definitely at play is country wealth. Typically, as countries get richer, they actually tend to be less likely to say that religion is important. They're less likely to say that it's necessary to believe in God in order to be moral. And we've seen these patterns across the countries that we survey, both in this survey and in past surveys that we've done. So country wealth is an important factor when it comes to religiosity overall. And generally, those richer countries tend to be less religious, and countries with less GDP per capita tend to be more religious, and that holds to this day.
All right, Jacob Poster with the Pew Research Center. Thanks for your time and helping us understand this fascinating survey.
Thank you very much.
Coming up, America's pastime is back. How players are getting into the swing of things next.
Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
I'm Ephraim Graham, and this is Studio 5. Cruise with me as I discover the good things happening in the world of music, sports, television, and movies.
The fact that Ryan Coogler was going to be directing the film, I knew that something special was going to happen.
We'll chat with artists at the forefront of entertainment and explore the connection between popular culture and faith.
I asked my pastor, I said, well, does that mean I'm supposed to be a preacher? He says, well, no, you already have a pulpit.
Watch Studio 5 Wednesday night at 9:30.
Remember for a moment what it was like to be a child. You believed every story you were told. You saw a world full of endless possibilities. What stories will the world's orphaned and at-risk children believe? We believe the Bible tells the only story truly worth believing. We believe that every child should have the opportunity to dream, the chance to take challenges and turn them into possibilities, the chance to stand on the promises of God, to recognize their place in the greatest story ever told. They have their whole lives ahead of them. Theirs is a world of endless possibilities. They are looking for a story to believe. We will tell them that story. Will you join us?
I am Regent's first ROTC graduate student.
Young people, millennials, are flocking to church.
It's not an exaggeration to say that we love to meet them and that we love to know their stories.
And finally tonight, despite empty stadium seats and canned crowd cheers played over the sound system, baseball is back for a shortened 60-game season and lots of new rules. Major league teams faced off this weekend in 7 preseason games. Players and coaches found unique ways to communicate and keep things exciting. The New York Mets used cutouts of fans to fill seats behind home plate, and rather than high fives, the players exchanged air fist bumps after the game. Thursday is the official start of the season, with the Washington Nationals defending their World Series title against the Yankees after losing to the Phillies. Nats pitcher Max Scherzer said this is 2020 baseball, so you've got to keep a smile on your face and have fun with it, rolling with the punches. Well, thank you so much for watching Faith Nation. Have a great night and hope to see you back here tomorrow.